Yeah. What's cinema like at the moment? I think that there's a lot of doomsayers in the world that have for many years now said that cinema's dead, and um, a lot of people, and that can range from the highbrow, like elitists who think that, and also just your everyday person who maybe grew up and they could see 2001 in a movie theater, and now they think it's just blockbuster. Now they just think it's Marvel movies, and I understand why that's the case. So I'm just saying it runs the gamut. This notion that it's a depleted art form or that there's nothing out there, um, and I just think it's a lack of curiosity and also just a lack of. Let me start that over. I'm Carson Lund. I'm from the United States, specifically New Hampshire, which is part of the Northeast region of the country. I grew up in a small town, a small suburb of Boston, Boston, Massachusetts, to a very supportive family, a family that's very supportive of the arts, very much, yeah, very supportive of all of the different things that myself and my brother were interested in as kids, and also my sister. I have two siblings, and I for a long time in my life I was wanted to be a baseball player. I was a baseball player through much of my life, and that was kind of my single-minded goal. And I at some point I grew a bit tired of the entire culture around it and the competitive atmosphere, and I pivoted pretty 180 to filmmaking. That was around the high school years. I was already interested in filmmaking, or before that, always just screwing around with a camera with friends, making short comedies, and just trying to emulate our influences as we were growing up. Um, which in the early days it was spoof comedy like Zucker Brothers and stuff, and eventually the influences got increasingly highbrow, and eventually it was Richard Linklater, and then it was David Lynch, and then it was Bela Tarr. And so I feel like throughout my filmmaking as a young man, I was I can see all the influences very clearly. It's very transparent. I think what I was trying to pull off in those early works, and I hope now I've started to synthesize my influences more. But um, through high school, I started really getting interested in world cinema, um, art house, slow cinema, people like Tarkovsky, um, Antonioni, Ingmar Bergman. I was working at a local library, um, my hometown library, and the person who ran the media center was a very generous buyer of Criterion Collection titles. So the the library had probably the best collection of independent and foreign and art cinema in the entire state of New Hampshire. So incredible selection there, and I really had carte blanche to just take whatever I wanted. And I maintained like a staff pick section, so it was really like running a video store, you know.
Yeah, like yeah, I was thinking about video club, like that, video store, definitely, like the old days.
Yeah, exactly. And but it was that, but at a library. So it was the bottom floor of a library, kind of like we were in the music art media section, and most of the patrons were upstairs looking at books, but the people who wanted to get a
Mm.
taste of the real stuff were coming down. So that was always a big influence in my life, just being a part of that um, of that library at that point in my life. So that really got me interested in I just had this like voracious appetite for
Mm.
um, films that were just outside what I had been used to, what I grew up watching, through
Yeah.
most of my life. I wanted a taste of what else was possible with
Mm.
the medium. So
And yeah, do you remember the trigger um, at that time?
the trigger, like what got me
Like
into.
like um, So you were thinking about filmmaking and you watch a lot of films, and w- there was a particular movie or an actor maybe who influences you and or something like this.
Um, yeah. Like, at what point did I segue from? For me, I feel like it was a leap from kind of the seeing movies as just comedies. Like, I really enjoyed comedy back in the day, and then I saw it as more like this medium that could touch your soul or something. And I think kind of the earliest example of someone who pushed me in that direction as a director was Kubrick. I think I saw 2001, and I just felt like, oh my God, there's so much more you can do beyond tell a story. Um, so I think probably Kubrick was an early influence and just kind of opened my mind, and also Wes Anderson. I think but two filmmakers who are extremely visually conscious. Like, anyone watching their film would notice that they have a very pronounced style. Um, Whether you're a cinephile or not, it's just so apparent. So those are often the kind of filmmakers that you get interested in at first. And I've always been someone who takes a lot of photography. I've always been a director of photography, mostly, actually, more so than a director. So I think I was really getting attached to their compositional style pretty early on. Um, and then from there, I think I started to expand outward and beyond American cinema. And but I think Bergman was probably the first one that really spoke to me. Um, Maybe partially because I have a Swedish last name and I have a little bit of Swedish heritage, so I was sort of trying to reach for some kind of
Yeah, yeah,
family legacy or something about who I am. I was trying to figure it out, but yeah, Bergman was probably then the big gateway drug to a lot of the harder stuff.
it's a good choice. It's he has a footprint in filmmaking, so yeah, definitely.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
serious. Have you been to a film school or not?
Yeah, I went to Emerson College, which is a Boston film school. I was open to other film schools, but it actually turned out that I only applied to Emerson and I got in, and it was the one I wanted to go to, and it was close enough to home, and I figured, this is gonna be it. It's a really reputable school, extremely expensive, and it's shackled me with debt for a large portion of my life. But at the same time, I owe so much of my professional opportunities in life now to having gone to that school. So it's a blessing and a curse. But yeah, a lot of my network, a lot of the people I work with now are Emerson alums. I had some great professors there. Yeah, it's a school that is very industry focused. They're very, like, very much fixated on getting you into the industry and finding you a job after school. But there's also a really healthy part of the faculty there that's just much more mindful of cinema as an art. And so you could get a nice balanced education. It wasn't just like a trade school, it was very much a cinema education, very kind of well rounded. And beyond that, too. I mean, it's a liberal arts school, so there's all sorts of courses, and I learned quite a bit there. And met some of the people that are just my closest friends, my closest collaborators, and yeah. So I did go to film school. I don't think it's, especially now, I don't think it's 100% necessary in life if you want to be a filmmaker to go to a film school. But for me, it was I wouldn't be where I'm at today without that
Yeah,
experience.
I understand. Yeah, yeah, sure. And it brought you to another project maybe and so on and so on. And do you remember the your first project or?
My first, well, it depends on how on what kind of project you mean. I mean,
Ah,
like my first serious project.
yeah, it depends your gig. So you're a cinematographer, but are you a filmmaker, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So you started with as a filmmaker or as a cinematographer, the first one?
Well, for a long time, I collaborate very closely with my friend Michael Basta, who I grew up with, who also went to film school in the same city, but at a different school, an art school more so. But we have always made films together, and we kind of really found our voices together through making different projects and exploring different styles. And it took a long time for us to find what we kind of wanted to do with filmmaking. But I would say that for a long time we didn't really put labels on anything. We both kind of directed, we both kind of shot, we both recorded sound, we just did everything. And before I really understood the full machinery of filmmaking, I was just kind of like, well, what's the point of an entire crew? We can just do this. We know what we're doing. We understand all the facets of filmmaking. Why do we need all this hierarchy?
Mm,
Um, and of course, I was very wrong. I realized that there's so much more to it. But but I would say that conditioned me to think of myself a certain way, which is not as any one specific role, and more just as a kind of holistic
yeah.
filmmaker. Because I edit as well, and I've always been someone who conceives of an idea and wants to do every little part of the process. So I'll write it, I'll direct it, I'll
Mm,
shoot it, and then I'll edit it. Um, and when I say this, I'm talking mostly about low budget and short form kind of projects. So like you mentioned earlier, I'm a musician as well, so music videos for my band, even just yeah, like short films throughout high school, short films throughout college. Was They were always really just like everyone was wearing so many hats. So I didn't go into it from like what's my vocation, from the standpoint of like what's my vocation going to be in this field. Um, and it's only taken several years, well, a decade, really, after college to kind of start figuring out where I slot into the whole process a bit more. Um, Even so, I still, if it's a project that I've written and that I really care about, I want to be involved in every facet. Um, and
yeah.
yeah,
It's it's a normal process. You know, when you start, you wear different hats, and you of course you try different things, and at some point you you improve. Okay, you get better, and at some point I think you have to outsource. This is not my I'm not very skilled in this um, area, so I need to give it to someone else who is better. We can do it
yeah,
even better to tell
right.
you to make this film. So and then doing that in parallel, you can just focus on your craft, on which is for you as a cinematographer. So you can always getting better and better, I think. Normal process. Mm.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think what happened was I realized um, I'm not someone who generates a lot of narrative ideas. Um, they come to me occasionally, but I was really struggling for a while because I was like, I just don't have the seed of an idea. And I would watch these films that I think were so brilliant because they were so simple. Um, I don't know. For instance, a film like In the City of Sylvia. Have you seen that? That's a
Say
movie
again?
that I think it's called In the City of Sylvia. A film I saw that it's so simple. It's just really about like the act of looking and about being interested in someone. The whole movie's about this guy, this character who follows this woman, which sounds creepy, but it's so much more of like a meditative, philosophical inquiry into the act of looking and the act of desire. Anyway, it's really really simple on a narrative level, but like gets it so much. And I was like, okay, that's the kind of idea I want to come up with. And I just for so long I was struggling because I just couldn't figure out what that idea would be. So I'm not someone. At some point, I realized I just don't really naturally generate story ideas. I'm not as much of a storyteller, at least at this point in my life. But I'm someone who can interpret someone's idea visually, and I'm
Mm,
very interested in finding a way to compose that idea on screen. Um, as long as I, of course, gel with the idea, if I understand what's being communicated and that the values expressed in the work are somehow compatible with me. So yeah, I think at this point in my life, I just realized I can bring more as a cinematographer, and I'm not going to be someone who's generating ideas all the time and being and marketing myself as a director because it's just not. I don't have that ability to just endlessly produce um, those kind of ideas, at least as in a storytelling sense. So I've sort of turned my attention towards cinematography. With that said, I'm also filming my first feature this year because it's a story that finally came to me that I felt like this is something I can make a film about that is very true to me and my experience. Um, and so I am going to direct it, but it's not something just because I'm doing this doesn't mean I'll immediately come up with another idea. I don't know if that'll happen. Uh, it's I think it. I'm not someone who wants to just start producing film after film after film. I think it's an art form that is just so important to me and so delicate that I think you just have to do it at the right time and
mm,
more life experience. At least for me, is going to be the thing
yeah, I
that
understand.
makes those ideas bubble up. You know.
Yeah, sure, sure. I think in independent process, you need to take your time preparing all the film shooting, and of course, it's not like on demand, like a factory. You have to release a film every year or something like this. So it's different because in this type of films, I think it's you have different. You have a film crew, of course, you have cast and crew, a lot of people working on it, and for several years. And for independent films, it takes time. It takes time. You don't have the same tools, but at the end, you just focus on your heart and yeah, and release the film when it's done. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But then about your last project, how did you get inspired? What is it about?
Which one are we referring to?
The last one. So you
The
told
one
me
I was
it's a feature film, right?
the one I'm gonna shoot. You mean?
Yeah, you're gonna you,
Sorry, are you talking about the one I was in Paris for, or the one I'm about to shoot?
ah, I'll talk about the last one.
The
So
one I was just in Paris.
at the moment you're so you, yeah, tell me, yeah.
Yeah. So I was just in I was just in Paris shooting the first portion of a feature film that is being developed at the moment, and they're seeking the funding to finish the rest of the film. This project arose uh, because I had met the director of the film uh, about 10 years ago in Cannes, and she was very she remembered me and had seen some of the work I'd produced with a production company called Omnes Films that I'm a co-founder of here in Los Angeles, and she'd seen two of those films, and asked me to shoot hers. So I was just in Paris doing a bit of that, and unfortunately, it's at a point where not much can be discussed about it. But yeah, it's an exciting project in the works.
Okay, okay. So I have to interview you again when it's done.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, all right.
It's like
Um,
it's it's so in the middle of, we've only shot a portion of it, and they're seeking investments for the rest. So it's like there's apparently in Paris there's a it's or in France, at least this is what I've been told, that it's you want to keep this stuff under wraps because it can jeopardize the possibility of funding. So
Yeah, I think
I can't say too much about it, but yeah,
yeah, I think you can value that that kind of you can value that for every globally, even everywhere basically. If you keep this thing hidden, and you work on focus on your work, and you release when it's done, of course, yeah, it's good, yeah. But yeah, it depends on the project. But independent is like this, independent films, yeah. I really,
right, right.
yeah,
Yeah, and I just don't want to. You might not want to include much of this at all, just because I don't
yeah,
want to. I don't want to say the wrong thing, and I
yeah,
know it's a
okay,
delicate thing because they're actively working on the edit
okay.
and also finding the funding. So I just
No, okay,
want to
and okay,
respect that. I
okay.
should have mentioned it before, but
That's all right. That's all right. Tell me about the workload, the mental work you put yourself in the films. Can you tell me about it? The workload.
yeah, yeah. Oh man. Well, it's a level of commitment mentally and physically as well that when I was making films as a kid, through junior high and high school, like it was never remotely as planned as filmmaking really requires. So I never got the sense of how much was actually involved. And when I made when I shot my first feature, Ham on Rye, which I was the DP for, director Tyler Taormina, it's played festivals all around the world, and that movie I think really, even though I shot films of significant caliber, I'd say in college. By that I mean there was a real crew and cast behind it. I don't mean they were great films, but when I shot this feature, Him on Rye, it really became clear to me how much labor is involved, not only during the shoot but in the run up to it. Um, Especially in independent film, I think you don't have an entire support system behind you at all times, sort of picking up the slack. You have to kind of run the show as the department head. In my case, cinematographer. I'm planning the equipment rentals. I'm picking them up. Even I am carrying everything. I'm putting it into the U-Haul at night and in the morning, and I have to organize that. I mean, this is more than a cinematographer generally has to do, but on a film of that size and of that kind of scale, which I've shot a few films like that, you are responsible for all of that, and it's really really draining, and physically as well. I mean, just you're carrying so much, and even just the weight of a properly rigged film camera, digital camera, but yeah, you know what I mean, is the weight of it is can be excruciating over the course of a day, and then of course weeks. So on top of that, you know that every minute that ticks by, you are losing money, whether it's your money or the production's money. It doesn't matter. Money is getting drained, so you have to be making very quick decisions on your feet, and obviously it's going to be based on quite a bit of preparation, and you want to prepare as much as you can so that when the spontaneity does arise, that you have a foundation of preparedness. um, but yeah, it's just incredibly it demands bit of your every ounce of your being. You can't really slack through this process at all. And now I'm about to direct my first feature, and it's even more, which I've witnessed secondhand through like working very closely with the directors of the first of the features that I've shot. Um, but I'm doing it all now, and I have a pretty big cast involved in this film I'm making, and it's really really tough to just keep everyone uh, to really communicate with everyone, to keep them all aware of what's going on, um, to make sure that you have everything buttoned up creatively and logistically. Make sure there aren't there's nothing falling through the cracks,
Hmm.
um, and then at the end, beyond all that, like making sure that there's still a vision intact, that you know what you want to communicate and express. And we haven't gotten to shooting yet. That's 2 months away, but I can feel the pressure starting to mount. And it's yeah, it's just because I've done it before doesn't mean it makes it any easier. Because every new project creates new challenges, new circumstances. So yeah, I mean, there's there's no way around that answer. It is grueling work, but it's so rewarding if you know you want to do it and you know what you want to express and you get even a fraction of that expression out onto the screen. Uh, it's so rewarding.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like you said, every project is different, and you take a lot. No, it's psychological sometimes, and you have to care about everyone in this kind of type of independent films.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's part of the. It's very demanding. Yeah, a lot of efforts. Yeah, of course, and
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. So yeah, yeah, sure, I can relate to that. Yeah. So so you said on on this film, you were the director, and I was thinking, did you hire a DP or this one or?
Yes, actually. So for the film I'm about to shoot this October, I for a while I was being stubborn and said I'm just going to shoot this because I'm a DP as well.
Yeah,
I can do it. And this is the old me speaking, where I think that I don't need a hierarchy. I can just do it like I used to. Um, and fortunately, I had people around me who said that's not a good idea, and I agreed ultimately. Um, it, it especially with a cast, it's a big ensemble film, so
mm,
um, this cast size and this many shots that I know I need to execute, I just can't be focusing on lighting. I can't be focusing on equipment, making sure that I have the right adapter for the lens that I want to use, et cetera, et
mm,
cetera.
mm, mm.
I can't be
Yeah,
doing that. So I knew I needed to hire a DP. Um, Fortunately, like I said, I have a great network from the school I went to, and I live in LA, but I'm shooting back in New England, where I'm from,
mm,
and which is close enough to New York City. So a lot of colleagues and friends that I went to school with now also live in New York City.
mm,
There's a big contingent of us that's out here in LA, but I also have a good group of friends in New York City. So I reached out to a few of them and saw who might be up for shooting a feature, and I found my buddy Greg Tango, who has has a pretty prolific career at this point, shooting both commercials and narratives and music videos. So he's shot quite a bit, but he hadn't shot a feature up to the point I had asked him. I'm actually not sure. I don't think he's shot one yet. Um, so this would be his first feature. So fortunately he was happy to jump on to my project. So yeah, I did, and now I'm a year away from a year removed from when I hired him. I'm totally realizing how critical it is because I have so much to think about, and now I can kind of delegate certain tasks to him, and I know he's also going to be bringing his own perspective to it, his own vision to it, and it's just going to make it a better film because we won't all be overworked and stressed out.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I had to relinquish some of my desire for control, I guess, on these sorts of projects.
I think it's part of the process. You know, at some point you have to realize that you need to release the stress. Like you said, you delegate to somebody
Mm-hmm.
who's skilled, better skilled than you. because you don't have time. You can do all the jobs in the same time, basically. Maybe
Right.
two, maybe two, but not too much because it's overwhelmed at the end.
Yeah, and the thing is, you maybe you could, but all of those jobs would suffer. That's the thing. You to do each part of filmmaking wisely and with care and consideration, you really need a little bit of mental space
Mm,
to be able to
yeah,
hone in and focus. If you are like, yeah, you might be extremely talented and skilled and be able to do all these different facets of filming. I'm not saying I am extremely talented and skilled, but I'm just saying theoretically you can, and you can do those things. But I think each area, even if you're extremely talented, even each area is going to suffer because you're not able to delegate that much mental energy to each part. Uh, and I think you need to. I think you have to have some space in your brain to
yeah,
not to be able to shoot, and then also to finish the shoot and be able to take your mind off it for a moment,
mm,
um, relax a little bit, and maybe think about something else, or look at the stars, or you know,
yeah.
exercise
Doing,
a healthy mind.
yeah, doing something else. Yeah, definitely. You have to
Yeah,
move on, and then you can come back and focus, finishing the editing or whatever. So, can you tell me about the editing video or the camera or something like this? Uh, which one do you use, or what it, what do you prefer? I don't know. What's
are you asking about like equipment that I use?
yeah, the gear. Yeah, sure.
The gear, yeah. I mean, the gear that's required for every project, it's always it varies project to project, of course. But as far as editing goes, I'm always using Premiere Pro these days, Adobe Premiere. I grew up learning Avid, uh, Final Cut as well, but I ended up just sticking to Premiere. I think it's really intuitive, and because it's so compatible with After Effects as well, you can make graphics and you can just come right back into the program. It's just all a little bit streamlined and easier, and I just am used to it now. So I don't really see the point of jumping around to different platforms. So I use Premiere. Camera wise, it varies a lot. I mean, there was a point. So much happened in about 15 years when DSLRs came onto the market, and we all got really excited about DSLRs. At that point in my life, I hadn't shot on anything remotely so high def, and I was working with standard definition all the time, and even worse than that. And that's just what I was used to. So I got a hold of this 1080p Canon 5D, and it was like absolute. It felt like a revolution to me, and I was so stunned by the images that I could then make for relatively little effort, or not so much more effort than what I was expending on the prior projects. And then I think those got very old very quick. The DSLRs, we became because that digital kept evolving, and we became very uh, aware of these new possibilities, and what raw video can do, and 4K, and sort of all the possibilities in color correction. We became very disillusioned very quickly by DSLRs, and now I think I'm at a new point where I'm disillusioned with the high end digital cameras, and I almost just sometimes want to just go back to the standard definition that I started shooting on because it's like more expressive or something. It feels like something I grew up learned. I learned it early on, and I there's something about the lack of definition and um, lack of beauty that is itself kind of beautiful. So I don't know. Maybe I'll go back and make something with that. But at the moment, I'm still, especially as a professional, you have to work with Red, you have to work with Alexa, you have to work with the high end Sony stuff. So that's what I'm generally using. I mean, I just shot the feature in France on Red. I shot the previous feature I worked on was an Alexa Mini, and then Ham on Rye was an Alexa. Sorry, it was a Red Scarlet. So I've gone back and forth between the two. My favorite is probably Alexa, which I think a lot of cinematographers would agree. Alexa has the best rendering of skin tones, and I think blue skies look the best on Alexas. So yeah, it's it's just become the norm, and I think anytime a certain image capture technology becomes the norm, it's easy to get disillusioned by it, and feel like it's sort of hit a dead end on its expressive potential. But nonetheless, I think that it's just a tool, and so many people use it poorly. So if you're skilled and you have a vision, you can make any piece of technology work in your favor. So ultimately, I've come around, and really like working with these cameras. But at some point I'd like to dabble in film again. It's been a long time. I love shooting 16 millimeter. I did it in college. Never shot 35, but I mean that to me is the kind of the holy grail. Uh, my favorite looking films in the history of movies are shot on film. There's no way around it. So at the at some level, these high end digital cameras of today are always just pale imitations of what film can capture. So you know, someday I'll shoot some more film, and I also think I'll probably play around with some projects that are uh, just standard def again.
I would like to talk to you about the sound, music, of course, and
Hmm.
the light. I have one question about the light. Depending on the season, summer or winter, for instance, in summer, the light is so bright. How can you handle it? For instance, how can you do it? How can you? It's too bright. How can you? I don't know. Um, the actors they don't see open eyes. Basically, they I don't know. How do you film? How do you set up the light or something like this?
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you meant it from a cinematography standpoint or just as a human being. How do I handle it? um, yeah. So I think I've maybe gained a little bit of a reputation with the filmmakers I've worked with that, oh, he's the one who never wants to shoot during the middle of the day, which I think is actually most DPs actually, but I've been pretty adamant about about trying to schedule shoots around, let's do the morning and then skip, let's take a siesta in the middle of the day and then shoot at night again, late afternoon. So I really, yeah, I really find harsh midday, high noon lighting to be really a challenge to work with. The thing is, it's not that it's usable light. It's like it's its own aesthetic for sure, and you can kind of embrace it and make it work for the material if it's the right material. But I think I gravitate towards images that feel a little more like they're otherworldly or kind of in some dreamy state. I think that's kind of the kind of images I like to capture. So I do gravitate towards those kind of like transitional periods of the day. I think whether it's early morning or dusk or sunset, I just those times I just think are just so. It's when the kind of the beauty of
Mm,
nature is so illuminated by the way like light is just so stunning in the way it's bounced around from the sun. There's so much to capture. So I do prefer to shoot at those times. I think summer light can be absolutely stunning if you do pick the right time, but it can also be extremely harsh and aggressive
mm,
if you're shooting midday. And again, it's just about the material you're
yeah.
wanting to shoot.
Mm,
Um, yes, so light quality has differed throughout my life in the sense that I grew up in New England where there's a lot of atmospheric conditions, a lot of weather conditions. There's a lot of rain and thunderstorms in the summer. There's a lot of snow and sleet and rain again in the winter. And this also produces really interesting clouds, and therefore the sun is always going through clouds and then coming out of clouds. And there's diffuse sunlight, there's hard sunlight, but there's also a lot of gray, a lot of overcast. So there's much more variation in the light where I'm from. Now I live in Los Angeles, and there's a much more consistent light here and a much more predictable light. And I have grown, like, I think it immediately jumped out at me because you feel you can always see the horizon, it feels like in Los Angeles because of how spaced out everything is, and how, the fact that the ocean's right there and there's the desert the other direction, and
Mm.
you can usually see these things. So shadows really run quite a distance. So that's the thing that's most striking about the city is like how far the shadow goes. Whereas in a city like Boston or New York, like you're always trapped between buildings, so usually everything's in shadow or everything's really bright, and you just don't, and you can't really see that far in any direction. In Los Angeles, you see quite a ways, and also the light is really dramatic. But at the same time, the light is very consistent and regular and predictable. And James Benning, a filmmaker, experimental filmmaker, makes all sorts of durational exercises. But he made this film called Ten Skies, and he talks about this, where he's like, the film is just 10 shots of skies, and he talks about, yeah, it was shot in Southern California just because practically that was the best. That's where I live, and it made sense to do so. But you normally wouldn't shoot a film like this. You wouldn't think to shoot a film like this in California because California doesn't have typically very interesting skies because there's not as many clouds. But he did it anyway, and he waited for the moment. So I think here in Los Angeles, it's like you have to wait to if you're always gonna get beautiful sunlight. You're gonna get exposure. Don't worry about that. But it's like if you're looking for those mysterious atmospheric conditions, you have to really wait it out and get up at odd hours
Okay.
and look at the weather. Try to predict it. But I'd say that's why when I want to shoot things, I think I gravitate towards shooting them in other places. So even just when I was shooting in Paris, I was so stunned by all the different qualities of light, the clouds, the way that they were manipulating the sun. Um, Yeah. So I like to go back home to shoot, and I also like to shoot in the winter. I love gray skies. I love, um, yeah, just I like when there's a layer of
Mm.
obfuscation on reality. If it's too much sun, it doesn't interest me as much. But again, it's all about the material. What does
Yeah,
it call for?
definitely. And your vision, your I don't know, your vision, or do you have an eye basically. When you have an eye on something, you see you have a perspective basically.
Right,
Perception, your perception. Yeah, yeah, it
right.
all matters. Yeah. Okay. Tell me about the music, the sound in your films. Oh,
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, music and sound are very important to me, which is why I noticed this background sound in your video so much. uh,
all right.
no, don't worry about it. You should keep that moment in. Um, yeah, I've always been a musician. Well, I shouldn't say that. For a while, I didn't know if I was going to be a musician, but I played trumpet early on. That was my first instrument. I just played in like concert band in school. Um, and then, but I was always interested in rock music and alternative music, and I just was kind of curious about songwriting, and I eventually taught myself piano, and I taught myself guitar, and I sort of found my way into singing as well, and I became a songwriter, and it's something I've done for almost 20 years at this point. not 18 years, 17 years. And I've released about six albums, I'd say, at this point between different projects. So it's always been a part of my life now, as long as I can remember. Uh, and it comes and goes. Like I get inspiration just periodically. Doesn't It's not like I feel it obligated to be producing albums at a steady clip or anything. But uh, but yeah, I still make music. I still write it, and I'm putting out a record right now. I've been putting out singles over the past month. So yeah, music is incredibly important to me. But I don't. That doesn't for me. That doesn't translate as wanting to make films with a lot of music cues. I just think that they're totally distinct and separate art forms that don't need to be combined all the time. So I think that sound design in cinema is its own kind of music. And yeah, certain films do really call for song cues, and I think that's great. Like Ham on Rye is full of music cues. The whole movie's like a jukebox movie. There's so many different wonderful tracks that Tyler, uh, you know, put together from his memory and from just things he was interested in, and it creates this really amazing combination. But I don't. But for the film I'm making this October, I don't see it as having a score even. I think the score is going to just be the sound design of the location. It's the movie's all in one location. Um, and yeah, I just think that there's a different language to telling a story on screen that requires more silence, more pausing, more attention to nuance, which music requires as well. But it's to me they're just so different. I can't really. I don't know if I can make too many comparisons, but yes, I would say just because I'm a songwriter and because I'm used to having to really scrutinize sounds and analyze them and figure out what works in an artistic context. Because of that, I think I'm also very attuned to how sound works in films. And the film I shot, the second film I shot, which I also edited, it's called Topology of Sirens, and it's showing around the world at some festivals right now. Um, that's a movie that's extremely sound driven. There's not a whole lot of musical cues, but there's a lot of musique concrete, if a sort of compositions based around field recordings and a mix of sort of the diegetic sound that we recorded on set, and then bringing in soundscapes that we find online, and also some that we record, and just finding some interesting combination of those things and applying effects. It's not music in the traditional sense, but that film is extremely sonically oriented. I think anyone who watches it will note that. I was along with John Davies, the director of that film. I was the sound designer of it with him. And Yeah, it just I would say we're both musicians, so we're both accustomed to thinking along those lines about how to even just how to EQ things, how to make things stand out, and how to make them uh, kind of just become a texture if you want them to just kind of disappear into the mix, things like this. So we were both very very conscious of all those things, and yeah, it's sound is just it's half of a film, so it's critical that I think that you think about it very very carefully.
Yep. Tell me, your best experience on set. Or do you have some anecdotes?
The best experience on set. Hmm. That's the kind of question that you get hit with, and that your mind just goes racing because there's so many fantastic. memories on set, and I'm at the same time struggling to remember a single one of them in detail.
No
uh,
worries. It's all right.
no, no, it's totally fine. I'm like, there's just been so many moments, uh, and I want to be able to, if I describe one of these moments, I want to describe it in a way that does justice to it. Um, I don't know. Maybe maybe I have to skip that one. I
It's up to you. But you can, I don't
think
know.
I have to because maybe I'll come back to it if I think of something, but
Yeah,
I'm kind
yeah,
of on
yeah,
a blank.
sure, sure. Anytime. So we're gonna move on, and if you remember
Yeah,
uh, one, and you just say, "Hey, I have one."
right, right,
Just
right.
all right, no worries. Okay, right. So you how should I put this? It's like making a living. So we all wanted to start like this and making a living with that. Can you do you have can you make a living, or do you have to have a day job or something in the same time in parallel?
Yeah, no, I understand the question. Well, yeah. So I think having just been in Paris, I think the answer might vary from country to country, in terms of what you're able to do. But in America, I'll just speak from the perspective of America, which is a pretty cutthroat economic environment. Um, I work a day job, and I have worked a day job for a decade now, about, um, in advertising. Actually, I edit video and shoot video commercials for various brands at an advertising agency, which is sort of a global agency, actually, headquartered in Paris, of all places. But yeah, I work here in Los Angeles, mostly from home now, ever since the pandemic. But I've had this job for a long time, and I really appreciate the people I work with, and there's a lot of good people, and I get to travel around, mostly domestically, but occasionally international. And yeah, I've worked on so many different projects over the years, and it keeps me you know keeps me sharp. I'm actually exercising the craft, even though it's in a very different context. I'm actually using the tools that I want to be using to make films. So yeah, I got lucky coming out of school. My brother was a graphic designer at this agency, and they needed an editor, so I found my way into this. And to be honest, I don't want to work in advertising forever. I've been pretty clear about that from the very beginning. Um, I'm eventually hoping to find my way out, but I don't want to make that sound like I'm having a terrible time, because it's been, given the realities of our world, and the fact that I have loans, and I need to support myself in a pretty expensive city, uh, in a very expensive country. Um, I need to have an income that's steady. So, and for me, a steady income is something that enables me to feel creative, to have the mental space to be creative. If I'm too preoccupied with finding out where my next paycheck is going to come from, and if I can make rent that month, I feel like I just don't have the mental capacity to create, whether it's music or film. So I really need a job like this. But what's great about this job is that it's not too demanding. I know exactly what it is. It's a kind of a known quantity in my life. I know how much I'll work generally. Um, I know what it involves. So it's something I can kind of compartmentalize in my own brain, and I can say that this is my daytime will be spent doing this, and my evenings, very broadly speaking, will be spent doing my creative projects. But oftentimes they all bleed together. But the fact is that I know it's not going to be so consuming at my day job that I can't ever focus on anything else. So it's not that way. And I do have the day job, and I'm very grateful for this particular day job because I know a lot of people who work day jobs that they're not thrilled with and are still trying to make something work on the side, and they just feel like they don't have the capacity to do so. So yes, it's a reality that we all deal with, and I hope that the more film work that I can be involved in, I hope to eventually find my way out of advertising and just be working on cinema projects.
Yeah, like I understand because it's a good thing to find a good balance. You said for the income, you don't have to think about that, and then you can focus on other projects, and you have space, like you said, you have space to for everything, for your personal life, your day job, and your personal projects, and you can move on like this. And yeah, you find I think it's well balanced like this. Yeah,
Hmm.
definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
And like you said, you work in video, basically video editing, so it's kind of in the same area as cinema. So yeah, of course, yeah, you have to do once you have this stable um, balance, then you can have these projects. You can produce. You can have this. You can develop. You can develop films definitely.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly.
Tell me about the projects. Did you use the crowdfunding, the fundraising?
Oh, crowdfunding. Um, yeah, so the two features I shot prior to the project I just worked on and the one I'm about to shoot, those two features were partially crowdfunded. Um, they were also extremely micro budget, so there wasn't that much money to raise, but it was a mix of crowdfunding and also just personal investments from friends and family. The new one I'm making is partially crowdfunded as well. Um, I was pretty pleased with the haul that I was able to pull in through crowdfunding, Kickstarter specifically, um, which I think is just a hopefully a testament to the success of those prior two films that people might be a little interested in what we're going to produce next. So I'm proud of that. So it did feel like we actually were pulling in money a little faster than expected. Um, but that's only ultimately a very small fraction of the budget that we're actually running with for the production this October. So, you know, crowdfunding I still think is essential. In this case, in the case of this film I'm talking about, they were truly Kickstarter funds. They kickstarted the process of us finding the actual investment that we needed to make this film. So, you know, they were starter funds. They enabled us to do certain things that we wouldn't have been able to do to find what we needed to make the whole thing happen. So, as far as like crowdfunding as a an outlet for actually actualizing the whole budget of a production, that feels a little bit. I don't know. Maybe some people can pull it off, but it feels a little bit like fiction or like a fantasy to me. But I still think it's a valuable tool, um, even at the very least, just for raising the profile of something. Putting it like it's a very quick way for everyone to get a sense of what a project is, and it can get buzz on social media, and people can start talking about it without it even being a real project yet. You know, it's just an idea. It's just a plan. So uh, yeah, I think it's an important tool, even if you don't plan to use, even if you don't. Well, of course you want to plan to use the money, but if you're not expecting for that money to be a substantial part of your budget and you just want to raise the profile of the project, and you might need a little extra for, you're always going to need a little extra. That's the truth. I mean, you never know what it'll go towards. But I think it's important to do that um, if you're at this kind of budgetary level of independent filmmaking where you want to increase profile of your film um, in the public sphere, and that's kind of one of the best ways to do it, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah, it's like publicity, it's like advertising, so in a way, but it's in the same time, on the other end, it's kind of demanding. It's like a job,
Oh
like
yeah, yeah. It's
promoting marketing.
yeah. And
Uh,
I felt a little. I have many times felt a little bit self-conscious about it, and a little bit like I'm demanding things and being greedy, or just being a little bit shameless. And I think one thing I learned is I've heard a few times from different filmmakers, you have to, if you want to get something done, you really just have to let go of that shame. You just kind of have to put yourself out there, and maybe you can, if there's someone you're worried about that you've asked for money too many times, you can just tell them straight up, hey, look, you don't have to donate to this, but I have to do this anyway. You can get that covered off on your own, but it's like you have to kind of remove that element of shame because you always are going to be in this particular culture like marketing yourself at some very basic level. Like you have to be unafraid to just put yourself out there like that. Um, so yeah, I've had to just overcome that.
yeah, 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 I understand, I understand. Yeah, it's part to be in the spotlight, something like this, and sometimes some people, some filmmakers, they don't get prepared to speak, for instance, to speak in public, maybe. But in that case, to be able to be in public and promoting your project, so basically asking for money.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, that's a good. It's a good point too. It's good practice. It's the first step of you talking about your project to the public, even though it's in video form. It's going to help you figure out what you need to say about the project to the thousands of people you're about to talk to for the next several months of pre-production while you're talking to actors, crew, whoever. That there's a certain narrative you're going to create in those early stages, and a lot of that is developed in crowdfunding campaigns.
Tell me about your film experience. No, sorry. Tell me about your film festivals experience.
Like attending film festivals.
Attending or um,
Yeah.
con- so anything relating to film festivals.
Yeah. So I have been to several film festivals, but not on a super regular basis or anything. I've been to maybe 15 over the years, both within the U.S. and outside the U.S. Mostly, I've attended as a critic. Actually, I write about films for different publications, mostly Slant Magazine, online, and so I've covered different festivals for them. It's not something I haven't been doing a lot of it this year, actually. Film criticism, I mean, just because I've been so preoccupied with what I'm trying to make this year. But fortunately, with Slant, there's certain opportunities will arise to go to film festivals, so I've taken them when it's possible. So I've been to Cannes, I've been to Zurich Film Festival, I've been to I was just at the Champs Elysees Film Festival in Paris. I've been to Maryland Film Festival in America, which I loved. One of the great independent film festivals in America. I don't know. There's several more. Like I said, I don't go constantly. I've never been someone who goes to the same festival every year. But but yeah, as an attendee of film festivals, I've had a really enriching experience several occasions. Just you know, writing about films and looking through a program and deciding what I want to go see and trying to see two or three films a day, but also socialize in the time in between. I think it's just such a as a cinephile, it's like the best place to be because there's just so many people to meet, and there's always something to discuss because you're all at the same film festival, seeing
Mm,
the same
yeah,
things.
definitely.
So it's just a very exciting experience. And then as a filmmaker, when you have a project in a film festival, it's even better because people just come up to you and they're interested in you. And this is my big ego talking, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it's I don't know much more to say. I really enjoy film festivals. I think they're very important to the health of this art form.
Yeah, yeah, it's as a filmmaker when you go to the to a film festival. So basically, you represent your film as a filmmaker, and what do you like? Do you like, I don't know, to interact with the audience? Do you like the trophy, or do you like the atmosphere? Like you said, you can network as well. You can socialize, of course, and network with your fellow filmmakers as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love that aspect of it. I mean, I don't know. I think even though I'm saying I love film festivals, I think it's very important as a filmmaker and as a viewer, um, or critic, like to find a festival that's compatible with you, that where the programming is in line with the kind of work you enjoy, and that draws an audience that is also simpatico with that. So we've had our films shown in different festivals that were just not extremely welcoming. And I won't name names, but where not the festival themselves, not the festival itself necessarily, or the programmers who made these decisions, but the kind of people that were at these film festivals. They were looking for something that our film was not providing them, um, and it was those can be very alienating experiences when you feel like, well, you've been clearly someone who's responsible for making decisions here saw something in this film that we made, but they weren't able to position it in such a way that the audience was able to see that as well. So it just feels a little bit like there's this extreme like disconnect, and you're there to show something that means so much to you, and yet it's not getting through at all. And I just think it that films have much better luck if they're placed in the right context and they're surrounded by films that are of a similar aesthetic or a similar mentality or approach. And that doesn't mean I want festivals with a bunch of films that are the same, but yeah, it can be night and day. Is all I'm saying. Whether the festival kind of works for you or not. But yes, in the perfect world, when it does seem to be gelling and the films there are interesting and the audiences are interested, when that happens, yes, the process of showing something and then chatting with the people who came all night about their films and about yours, uh, it's such a rewarding experience, and it says, yeah, it's the best possible outcome, I think. So I guess you said networking. Networking has this, I think, career connotation to it, which I think, yes, we're always kind of networking at the core of it, but I think um, I don't really think of it that way necessarily. I'm just looking for people that share
Basically, sharing,
a vision
basically
and
sharing, yeah, sharing your film with the
yeah.
audience, with people, basically. And you can, this is the film I want to show you,
Hmm.
and I hope you enjoy it, basically. And
Yeah.
if you don't, tell me so I can improve. So in a way,
Right. Right.
Uh,
Right.
so yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I would like to ask you something else about the cinema. Nowadays, with the technology, with the camera, someone can buy a camera, video editing, and can start to make a film. Do you think it's positive, negative? Do you think this is the future of cinema?
The democratization of cinema,
Yeah.
is this a good thing? You can't. Yeah, it's. I don't see it as negative. No, I mean it can't be. Like the more potential voices, perspectives that are uh, empowered to be able to make films is the better. I think it's all to the benefit of humanity. I think, and I just because people can do it doesn't mean that they're going to make something that's compelling or unique or individual. It a lot of I think with the proliferation of technology and the democratization of it, there's going the kind of like the median quality is going to dip overall, and there's going to be more substandard work, and it's going to just make the cream of the crop become that much more apparent. Although, of course, you add the it's a difficult question because then you add in so many other factors like the business of it all and the gatekeepers and who gets to see what and what gets shown at festivals based on a number of political reasons. Um, so just because it's a great film doesn't mean it will be seen. But I think at the end of the day, a great film will be seen. It'll find its way. Um, it will find a way to stand out. So I'm not terribly worried about the democratization because I think even though yes things are more accessible, equipment's more accessible, at least for me, the whole idea that certain filmmakers flaunt the platitudes that that you can all just go out with a camera and a couple friends and make your film. You should do it. What are you waiting for? Thinking of like certain mumblecore directors in America. They're always just acting like it's so easy to do, and it's just because their ideas are uninventive and narrow-minded. I think, um, not every movie should be a couple of guys hanging out in an apartment talking. I mean, I'm talking about movies that probably existed 10 years ago, but in any case, just like um, my point is that just because it's democratized, just because this stuff is cheaper overall, the amount of labor involved in a production, if it's going to be of high quality and serious consideration, it's so much. There's a barrier of entry here with filmmaking that I don't think there's. I don't think it compares with in the music world. The music world is truly, truly oversaturated, and it's. I think that's an industry, the medium in which you actually can make really brilliant music and actually never be heard nowadays because it's so overrun by a behemoth like Spotify, which controls everything, and kind of can just bury so much. um, but I think that because there's still a barrier of entry with filmmaking because of the manpower that's involved and the planning that's involved. Even if you're going to shoot with a cheap camera, you still have so much work to get done, and a lot of people are going to not be cut out for it and not feel like they can commit that much time and effort to it. So yes, it's democratized, but it's never going to be um, what music is. So to me, that's why I feel a little bit more optimistic about the potential for independent filmmaking to achieve a broader audience and to kind of cut through the noise than I do about independent music achieving the same goal.
Yeah. Okay, okay, yeah. So, and what do you think about the cinema in general, currently? Maybe you can talk about American cinema or in globally, maybe in general. What do you think about this industry basically at the
Yeah,
moment?
yeah. What's cinema like at the moment? I think that there's a lot of doomsayers in the world that have for many, many years now said that cinema's dead, and um, a lot of people, and that can range from the highbrow, like elitists who think that, and also just your everyday person who maybe grew up and they could see 2001 in a movie theater, and now they think it's just blockbuster. Now they just think it's Marvel movies, and I understand why that's the case. So I'm just saying it runs the gamut. This notion that it's a depleted art form or that there's nothing out there. Um, and I just think it's a lack of curiosity and also just a lack of it's not always the individual's fault. There's a whole host of reasons why so much of the best work that's being created is just kind of being obfuscated by the market. But no, do I think it's alive and well? Absolutely. I think there's so much amazing work being created, and you don't need to look very hard. Well, at least I don't, because I'm very aware of all these festivals. But I, it's very apparent which festivals I think are the cutting edge of cinema, nowadays, and that's in America, it's something like True Falls Film Festival in Missouri. It's like showcasing a certain brand of docufiction hybrid that's been kind of in vogue for like a decade now. But even though it's sort of a broad movement that I think has had it's that the style is kind of calcified over the years, and there's a lot of films that aren't very interesting. There's also amazing work, and it's a artistic movement that I think has morphed quite a bit over the years. There's a lot happening in that world, and there's several fests in Europe that follow a similar trajectory, and I don't know all the names, and I haven't been to them, but um, Doc Lisboa is one of them. But then there's like Locarno Festival in Switzerland. I think is always showcasing really cutting edge narrative cinema from all around the world, including America. Actually, that's where Ham on Rye premiered internationally. Um, a lot of these, so the home for a lot of this stuff is Mubi. As far as streaming services go, it's Mubi and its Criterion Collection, Criterion Channel rather. Uh, there's I think Mubi is not something that is a household name here in America. A lot of people do not know about it, but that's I think a quick glance at their library will reveal how for someone who's not aware of the breadth of world cinema, just a quick glance at that will reveal how much they're missing and how much is going on in the world. That just doesn't find its way to their eyes because there's just so many factors. But but no, I think it's alive and well. I think there's so much going on, um, and so many just uh, different ways of seeing and ways of telling stories that are emerging, and they're sort of
Yeah,
studio filmmaking absolutely ruled the
mm,
conversation for so long, and I think that's sort of becoming obsolete a little bit, and now it's opening the door for a lot of other forms of expression.
yeah, I agree. It depends on different factors to see a film. Maybe you never heard about the Ethiopian movies, and you need to go to festivals
Right,
to watch some of them. And
right,
uh, so there's so many movies around the world. So well, it depends on different factors, definitely. And
yeah,
festivals, they bring them to you, to the audience, which is
right,
great. Which is
right,
great.
right, right. Yeah, I've had so many. That's one of my favorite things as a festival is just discovering something that no one else has seen and being able to write about it and tell people about it and hope that it might lead to something. But I always, if someone asks me like, that's one of my favorite questions to receive is like, what's a what's a festival film you've seen in the last 10 years that didn't get enough attention and didn't go anywhere? And I'm always like, yes, I'd love to tell you about that because, uh, it just reveals how much there is out there that never sees the light of day, you know, usually based on some economic reasons, market reasons.
Definitely, yeah, sure. Um, if you have the opportunity to work with someone, who could it be?
Uh, a dream collaborator,
Yeah, definitely.
alive or dead?
Uh, yeah, both.
Alive.
You should. Yeah, both.
Um, no, it's another tough one.
Yes. So, yeah, it's a tough question to ask.
I'd like to work with someone whose perspective is, or at least not whose perspective is different. I want to work with someone whose perspective is similar, but whose life experience is totally different. Um, the first person that jumped to mind was Ming Liang, the Taiwanese filmmaker. Even though he's often shooting his own work and now doesn't even shoot features in general. Um, if I could be his DP for a project, I would be over the moon, because I think we share a certain sensibility, but completely different experience of life. Um, so I don't know. Maybe that's a good maybe that's a good answer. Um, do you
I think
mean direct? What's
it
that?
could be, I think it would be complementary, maybe, no?
Yeah,
Something like
yeah,
this.
exactly. Yeah, I know. That jumps to mind as a director. For some reason, I thought Joanna Hogg, the director of the Souvenir films, um, I really like her work, and I just think she's got such a brilliant sense visually, and the elliptical nature of the her storytelling. Um, I'm not I'm not gonna bring up like I don't know. There's other directors that are just the best of the best. Like that as I say that I was like, oh, Claire Denis would be pretty cool too, but she's got her own DP that she's always working with. Agnes Godard, great. Um, I don't know.
I think
I think I try to keep my sights set on what's kind of practical and within the world that I'm in. Yeah, there's several filmmakers I'd like to work with. Um, Maybe I won't directly address them because they're I don't know because they're more in my own orbit, and I think it's actually feasible. So I don't want to jinx it. But yeah, yeah. There's a lot of people on that list. But as far as yeah, dream collaborators, I'll give you those two, Psy and Joanna Hogg.
okay. Tell me, what do you wish in the short, mid, and long run?
uh, sorry, can you rephrase the question? Like, what do I
Yeah,
like?
it's like
Long, like your
what do
term
you
in the
want? What do you want in the short run, mid run, and long run?
you mean like short term, short long,
Yeah,
midterm?
term. Yeah, term. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Just certain words. Wasn't sure if it translated. Um, well, in the short term, I just want to produce my film. I want to get it shot. Um, I'm shooting it in October, so if all goes according to plan, it will be shot at the end of October. That's the short term goal. A lot of people say, "Aren't you worried about the editing?" And I'm really not. I feel like for me, the production process is the big, huge question mark, and it's very stressful. um, and I love doing it once I'm in it. But it can be there can be sleepless nights. There's a lot of anxiety that leads into it, and you really kind of gotta get into a flow, and it takes several days for me to really feel like I'm really in the film. So the short term goal is really just to get through the project, to shoot it, and I'm really looking forward to it. But like as I say, it's just also anxiety provoking because I'm in charge of so much. So the short term goal is just get it in the can. Midterm goal, I would say, is you know finish it, finish the edit, and also get it into some festivals. Um, that is, I know I'm sort of answering this only in the context of this one project, but it's hard for me to separate myself from it right now because it's so a part of my everyday thought. But yeah, I mean, I want this film to travel to the festivals that I see it as being a natural uh, fit for. And I feel like if it doesn't travel to those festivals, if it doesn't get seen at festivals, that would be a major disappointment. But I think given the track record of our other features and some of the people that I've assembled in the cast for this film, I do think it has certain there's something to it that I think will draw people's attention. Um, I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, the midterm goal, yeah, definitely to be like traveling to some film festivals with the film. And yes, I've done that with him on Rye, and I've done it. Actually, I haven't done it for the second film yet, but I've done it before, and it's really gratifying. But it's one thing to be a DP and talking about a film you shot, and it's another thing, I think, to be presenting a film that you actually wrote and directed. So to me, this film just feels so much more fully like my own vision, my own project. And it's something I've been waiting my whole life to finally do. So to be able to present it publicly to an audience of like-minded people who are willing to accept it on its own terms and not try to fit it into some other narrative or expect something out of it that it's not prepared to give. Uh, that's really that's what I'm really craving, I think. The long-term goal is certainly to leave my advertising job. And by long term, I guess it's not even, I want this in the next 5 years, really. But I don't know if I can say long term in terms of 50 years from now, because that's just too far, too abstract. But yeah, in the next 5 years, I want to be out of the advertising worlds, and at least partially, at least not full time in the advertising world, and kind of pivoting into filmmaking full time, freelance on a freelance basis, working with people. Like I really want to just keep working with directors that I admire, directors whose sensibility matches my own, that we can share, that I can be a collaborator with from a very early stage of the process, which is how it's been for in my collaborations with Tyler, who's the director of Him on Rye, and John, who's the director of Topology of Sirens. So, um, yeah, being a part of these projects early on and having a say in the development of the narrative or the visual style, and also having a say in the editing. I really want to work with people who do value me in that sense, and not just as a cinematographer for hire who's coming in to just know how to use the camera and that's it. I I do want to just keep working with directors like this, and that's my goal. I think that's the big goal to to be able to sustain myself just as a filmmaker, and not as
Yeah,
a
yeah,
advertising professional.
yeah, yeah. But I think as well, we need to diversify, to have to think, don't put all your eggs in the same basket. So, like you said, different stuff, different hats. course, and at some point you have to, yeah, you focus. I suppose you're gonna reach your goal basically. Yeah, focus on your goal and yeah,
Yeah,
well balanced life. I think yeah, it matters
yeah,
at some point. Yeah, yeah.
for sure, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah. All right. Tell me about your if you have some tips. If you have some tips, hold on. Okay. If you have some, do you have some tips for the newcomers? Or
yeah. Newcomer filmmakers.
mm,
Uh, yeah, maybe I do. I would say don't feel as though you need to be in a rush to produce the film of your life or the kind of like your defining statement. There's really no rush, and you need to just absorb as much information as you can gradually. And that's and basically free yourself of the need to just work in the industry as a filmmaker right away. When I say right away, I mean like whether it's out of school or just like whenever you become an adult, quote unquote. Don't feel like you have to immediately start making films or else it's never going to happen. I think for me, this buffer period of having a day job and working in another industry has made me realize how badly I really do want to just work in films. And but I wasn't quite ready to have that realization right away. When I started working, I knew I wanted to work, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do exactly in films. And I also just wasn't ready to express myself in a cinematic medium until the last 5 6 years. I was doing it then, but it was all secondhand. I would say I was trying to emulate other filmmakers, and I think now I'm just not even now. It's slowly taking shape, but I think it you should give yourself the time to figure out what you want to express and give yourself life experience. Go have life experiences. Don't just start working on films because it's not really life. um, you want to travel around, you want to check out different cities, meet a lot of different people, see a lot of different movies, and then you might start to develop a worldview, and that's where a film is born. I don't think you can rush it. That's my main advice.
it's true. It's true. It's true. Travel, experience life. Yeah, and then you can come back and do your and make some films. Yeah, for me. It's accurate. For me, it's good. Yeah.
Hmm.
About that, which movie or series looks like you?
Looks like my style.
You.
Looks like me. Oh man. Looks like me. You know what? I want to say I don't. I'm gonna find it. Just give me a sec.
Yeah, sure. No.
Okay, there's a film. I don't know if I'm gonna answer this question the right way, but I'm sure in your view, there's no correct answer here. But there's a film called Winter Brothers from. It's a Danish film, I believe, from like 4 years ago by this director Hilner Palmason, I believe is his name. Um, and it's set at this kind of like factory, like sort of post-apocalyptic almost, just more like dystopian factory environment in somewhere in Eastern Europe, and it's about a sort of poorly adjusted young man who works at this factory as a manual laborer. And honestly, I don't remember the narrative that well. He gets frustrated. He's kind of an angry young person. I'd say that there's certain parallels in the narrative between it and Paul Thomas Anderson's The Master, only on a kind of like surface level, just in terms of how it treats its main character and how it characterizes him. But the filmmaking is just so vivid and so kind of uh, so intuitive, like the way it kind of just dispenses with all expectations and conventions and sort of just moves fluidly between styles. And okay, this moment we're going to do this entire sequence in one master shot, and then we'll do kind of a strange surreal montage set to drone music, and then we'll do an entire sequence in handheld, or we'll do a long take that's a dolly shot through the woods. And it's kind of mixing all these different aesthetic approaches, but it all feels really cohesive, and just on a kind of on a very surface level, it's really stunning. The use of color and light, um, just texture. I mean, everybody's always like caked in dust and debris. um, I really like films that have that quality. That's probably why I like Tarkovsky and Bellatar so much. Their films are so elemental. They feel like so kind of like of this earth, and you feel like everyone's always kind of dirty or sweaty, and there's everything. Every location is caked in residue of life. So this is a film from recent memory, which feels like it's kind of like synthesizing some of those great European art house styles in kind of a new way. Um, and I would not say I'm anything like the main character, but like I said, I'm not a narrative first kind of person anyway. But I think this film captures a certain mood, and it's just paced perfectly, and that's my answer. Well, I can say one moment. It's not much of an anecdote, but it's the image that sort of is on the cover of, or it's an image that we've promoted quite a bit with Ham on Rye of these three girls scootering down a street, against a very pastel, kind of like purplish pink sky, which you get in Los Angeles quite a bit. That was since it relates to that other thing I was saying about Los Angeles and trying to wait for the right conditions, and just hope for the best. We That was an amazing moment of that shoot. Late in the shoot, there's not a whole lot to say about it other than that we we planned it well enough. We had searched the city for a while to find the right angle where the road would there was a hill that would go up and look right into the sky, and we could see the scooters coming right over the top. And we had to have PAs on either end of the street blocking off traffic, and none of this was legal, but we knew we had a short window of time to get it, and it all worked out. And It's something I'll always remember because it was the end of our day, and we knew we only had one shot at this, um, and it happened, and everything just kind of came together to make it happen in the most serendipitous way possible. So everyone was thrilled about it, and we all went and had a beer, and we felt great. So there's no specific lesson here other than, you know, filmmaking is sometimes just magic, and everything just kind of comes together, um, as long as you've done some preliminary work and really kind of plan things out. Those the happy accidents will just present themselves over time. Yeah, well, my film's not out yet, so I can't. I'm not going to be able to promote that. I will promote the music I'm putting out right now. The band is called Mines Falls. That's Minesfalls. Um, It's the band I'm in with my brother. It's a two-piece. It's kind of an alt rock, piano-driven music. We're often compared to Radiohead, or Portishead, the two heads. Um, I'm the singer in the band, the songwriter, and we're putting out a new album right now. It's our third full-length album. We also have an EP. We have a pretty decent catalog. It's all on the streaming services. But yeah, we're putting out singles right now as we speak. You can follow us on Instagram, and the record comes out in mid-September. So that's my plug.